Hello and welcome back. I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana, and you are watching Marksman TV. Today I have another tabletop review and comparison for you. We will be taking a look at the Arsenal SAM7UF and the Chinese Polytech AK-47S, also known as the Polytech Legend. Now these are two very prolific milled receiver AKs and probably the two most popular of these milled receiver AK variants that exist on the market today, one old and one newer. So we will go through the general sort of historical context and a side-by-side comparison of the two. So if that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. That's coming up now. So the story of the milled receiver AK in the commercial semi-automatic United States market sort of begins around 1987. We do have the Polytech and the Norinco AKs coming into the country. Norinco mostly known for the stamped receivers, the S1, the S2, the S3, the full stock, the side folding, the underfolder. Now, the stamped receiver AKs from Norinco are more closely related to the Type 56s used most commonly in the Vietnam conflict. Also, the SKSs were known as the Type 56, and they did have Type 56 milled receiver AKs. That's getting a little bit sort of into that distinction, but on the United States market, the Polytechs in that time were known as sort of another level of quality when it came to the AK pattern. Now, the Polytechs at the time did retail around the $500 mark, whereas the Norinco 56Ss or the S1 or any variant thereof were around the $250 mark. So of course there was a big distinction in the quality. Now, $500 in the late 80s for an AK pattern was a lot of money. Like I said, most of all the other AKs were sitting in around the $200 to $300 mark. But sales of the Polytech Legends were very high, so people did really recognize that improvement of quality. Now, the historical context of this and sort of the quick demise of the Polytech Legend was the Stockton schoolyard shooting in California in 1989, where a person who I won't name used a Norinco 56S1, I believe, to basically shot in a playground at a school, killing 5 children, wounding 30 some odd others, and which sort of sparked a national debate on the legalities of these firearms. Of course, Bush Sr. enacted a sporting import ban, so the firearm had to have a legitimate sporting purpose to come into the country, which sort of put a quick end to the Polytech Legend. So these would have only been imported for about 2 years. Now, after 1989, Norinco did devise the MAC 90 in 1990. MAC, MAK standing for Modified AK, which had the big thumb hole stock and no bayonet lug and no threaded muzzle or anything like that. Other than that, it was the same AK with the same type of quality, but it was, sort of had all those features removed. Now, the MAC 90 would have stayed in production and sales in the United States from 1990 to 1994 when we had the Clinton assault weapons ban, which sort of wiped out the production of it entirely and put an end to the MAC 90. Now, the 1994 assault weapons ban would sunset in 2004, but between that period, there was an importation ban from Chinese firearms other than shotguns and shotgun ammunition, which still exists today. So unfortunately, when that ban expired, we still could not then get into Norinco and Polytech AKs. So the supply is what the supply is. Due to their rarity and the fact that they only came in for a couple years, they have gone up quite a bit in price. Now, the quality is still good by most people's estimate, and sort of summary of the AK world. The Polytech has always been sort of setting the standard of the milled receiver, or even the AK pattern or AKM pattern, AK-47, whatever you want to say, known for its quality and reliability, robust strength, and nice blued finish, sort of the blonde wood furniture. So there's that. Now, coming over into the Arsenal. So Arsenal is the Bulgarian pattern. Of course, they didn't have the 922R compliance, but they are receivers that are made in Bulgaria, a full milled receiver, and then imported into the country. You do have some American parts, trigger components, grips, things like that, because 922R did not exist in the late 80s. This is all Chinese made, every single part on it. Now, even though the SAM series of rifle is actually now in 2019 getting more difficult to get. There is no type of import restriction on these. I think most people are assuming that Arsenal is following up on their military contracts at the moment. So the SAM series of rifles, SAM meaning their milled receiver rifles, are a little bit tough to get at the moment. But again, if you're looking for a milled receiver AK, this is sort of the prominent option, as these are sort of unobtainable, again, unless you want to pay the higher price tag for them. Now, the quickest way you can tell you are looking at a milled versus a stamped receiver AK, there's sort of two quick ways you can tell. One is these big prominent lightning cuts in the side of the receiver. Two is any lack of riveting or anything which you would see on a stamped receiver AK. Now, the advantages in a milled receiver AK is, of course, the number one is going to be the durability. Stamped firearms as a whole in their military context is really meant to be built as a disposable or replaceable firearm. Cheap to make, you stamp them together, they will wear out over time, you dispose of them, you bring in a new one. A milled receiver AK, which was what the original AK-47 pattern was designed off of, is really meant to last the test of time. You can shoot them indefinitely. They really, you shouldn't say never, but they really will never wear out. They will be serviceable forever, as long as they're maintained. So the question this review is going to pose is the quality, is sort of the standard set by Polytech, do you really get that a lot in sort of this sort of range? From 1980 standards, this would be today, you know, if it were not extinct, about $1,000 to $1,200 rifle. This is about exactly where the Arsenals are sitting now. So let's go ahead and move through a point-by-point comparison of the two. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the weight, starting here with the Polytech. We are at 7 pounds, 6.7 ounces. And the Arsenal, 7 pounds, 6.3 ounces. So for all intents and purposes, they're sitting right at about the same weight. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look here at the front end, starting with the Arsenal. The front sight base does have the open sight hoods. Of course, you can use a AK adjustment tool for gross windage and elevation changes, up here at the front of the sight. Now here you do have the little spring-loaded keeper, which keeps your muzzle nut, which is what comes standard with the UF on here. Now keep in mind the Arsenals, you can get the side folder, the ender folder, or the fixed stock, and actually all three come with different muzzle devices. So the ender folder here just comes with the standard muzzle nut. Now this does come with a bayonet, accessory rail, and cleaning rod as standard. One of the things that makes the Arsenal SAM7 series is a little bit unique is it does have the 90-degree gas block. It's a little bit of a modernized feature on this as opposed to the traditional 45-degree angle. Of course, the barrel has a standard AKM profile and is chrome lined. Taking a look here at the Polytech Legend, similar sight base. Again, you can use any type of AK adjustment tool to make those gross windage and elevation changes. Similar little retaining nut here at the front and a muzzle nut here at the front, again similar to the Arsenal. You do have a cleaning rod here. Now the barrel, sort of the Chinese AKs, one thing that's very interesting about these is sort of the little lathe marks on here. So if you run your fingernail across that, you can feel the little tiny micro ridges in the metal. So all of the Chinese AKs that I've handled are sort of that way. Now here's a traditional 45-degree gas block, which you would see on an AK-47 or AKM, with a vented gas tube up here at the front as well. Now the barrel on this is chrome lined as well. Handguards on the Arsenal, of course, like I said, is Bulgarian. It's Bulgarian pattern with a little bit of a palm swell here. Now these are US made handguards, polymer and construction, of course, to meet with the 922R compliance. Not overly large or beefy or anything, just a nice, solid, easy grip. Nothing really special about them. On the Polytech, of course, you have the very iconic and noticeable blonde wood furniture, which you will find on most of the Chinese AKs, whether it's the Norinco 56 or the Mac 90 or the Polytech. So you see that sort of blonde wood, you know you're probably looking at a Norinco or a Chinese AK handguard. Of course, the profile is a little bit larger feeling than on the Arsenal. You don't have any type of palm swelling. Of course, they are wood in construction and are Chinese made parts, as again, this was before the 922R compliance. Now, sights on both of these are going to be roughly the same. They do go from 100 to 800 meters and are just a little leaf sight with a little slider here for your elevation changes. Again, gross elevation changes could be made up at the front of the rifle. The receiver, as mentioned again, is milled. You can see the lightning cuts there. This does toggle between safe and fire or semi. Of course, a fully automatic counterpart would go fully automatic, have a third position there. Sling loop is here on the left. Being an underfolder, this is the notch to push in. You can swing the underfolding stock down, which I guess I'll go ahead and do for you. That swings down there. This just hinges down and then rests flat there, giving you a much smaller, nice little package there. Now the finish on this is parkerized with some sort of paint painted over it. As these are very expensive firearms, the finish is the #1 complaint of Arsenal firearms. The bolt has a similar sort of color paint there on it as well. Bringing in the Polytech Legend, we are going to see very much similar characteristics. It does toggle between safe and fire. Of course, a third selector option would be there on a fully automatic variant. Now, the finish on the Chinese is a very nice blue. The receiver on this is sort of turning a plum type color, which is actually common on a lot of older blued firearms. Of course, all of your configurations are much the same. Your sling swivel on this side, push in that button to hinge down and swing around that underfolder there. Now the pistol grip here is also pretty iconic. It sort of has that waffle type cut into it, the little hash marks and checkering in there. And you do have this little bracket right here between the grip and the receiver as well. On most of your AKMs, you're just going to get either a polymer or a Bakelite, very thin profile grip like you see here on the Arsenal. So distinguishably a little bit different than on the Chinese AKs. Now the angle of the folding stocks in general, the Norinco sort of comes down to a little bit of a decline there in its angle, whereas the Arsenal is more of a straight back configuration. There is a little bit more reinforcing here on the back of the Arsenal, whereas the Polytech is just a single piece of bent metal on each arm and then straight into the sort of stamped butt plate there. Whereas here is very similar, but you do have sort of reinforcing points here on the Arsenal. It's just a little bit more of a durable feeling stock actually on the Arsenal. Okay, I'm going to do the disassembly portion of this together since they're both basically going to go the same way. We'll check that we are clear. Start by pushing in this little button in the back and then removing your dust cover. Push that again, takes out your guide rod and spring. Bolt and carrier at the top. Now, one interesting thing about the Norinco is you can sort of tell this sort of plum colored or gold colored trigger control group. Again, this is all Chinese made parts. It's a little distinct thing there. This one actually, even though there is some external wear on this, internally it is absolutely clean, which leads me to believe this is unfired. So there you go. Absolutely no carbon on that, which is pretty cool. Bolt carrier and everything on this is just as clean, and all the numbers are matching as well. But you rotate that, pops right out. There you go. The Arsenal is going to be the exact same way. Push that in the back. Guide rod and spring. Bolt carrier and bolt. Again, very clean. This is a brand new rifle. But there you go. And of course, internally there they are identical. I mean, they're the same sort of pattern, milled receiver, AK-47. But there's that disassembly for you. Now, some final takeaways here. When it comes down to quality, I think they stack up very well against one another. Again, the Polytech and any of the Norincos or Chinese AKs are going to command a little bit more of a premium just due to the rarity. It is also cool that they are 100% foreign made, no 22R compliance parts or anything like that. Also, if you are a fan of collecting of Vietnam era stuff, the Type 56s or the 56S or anything like that, even the Polytechs, are more closely reminiscent to the Type 56 AKs that were issued by the Chinese to the Vietnamese, North Vietnamese forces in the Vietnam War. So there's a little bit of that historical context as well. In terms of stacking up on quality though, they are both great feeling. I like the traditional wood here on these, but again, if you want wood furniture, you can always switch that out to any standard AKM or AK pattern wood. Of course, anything other than Yugoslavia will work on the Arsenal. Now, the bluing finish on the Norinco or the Chinese AKs or Polytechs, really, really nice. Better than, of course, the commonly complained about Arsenal finish on these. But, you know, that's just a finish issue, not a big deal. Functionally, both very comparable, both very smooth, very nice, robust. Weigh about the same package. They are the same platform, so you're not going to get much of a difference there. The Arsenals you can get in the fixed stock, the underfolder, or the side folder. The Norinkos and the Polytechs, pretty much the same sort of offering. You have the fixed stock, the underfolder like this, and then the iconic side folder, which if you find those are typically more expensive. You also have the variants with the underfolding spike bayonet. But anyway, again, all of that stuff is sort of relegated to the collector's market on these. So it's more of what type of buyer are you into, the historic collectability, nostalgia, the AK-47 AKM pattern, or something that you can get brand new on the market to go and shoot. Also think that one day these could be in the $2,000–3,000 mark. We don't know how long foreign imports. We already know there's been the importation on Russian firearms, on Chinese firearms. We don't know if there's going to be any other type of sanctions on any other type of firearms. So, of course, even if Arsenal stops making these like they did the SLR series and the 545x39, of course, anything that exists on the market today will become more valuable. Case in point, the 545x39 AK-74 SLRs from Arsenal, and also the Molat Vepers, which have just been banned from import, are skyrocketing in price right now. So could be considered a really good investment. Of course, as time goes on, these will continue to go up in value too. So I will go ahead and leave you guys with those thoughts. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know by leaving those down in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by hitting that like button and consider subscribing to my channel. Again, guys, I am Chris with Marksman Shooting Sports in Westfield, Indiana. You are watching Marksman TV, and I will see you next time.